All right, should I share my screen?
All right, Ms. Maddie.
Yep, I am going to introduce you first.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll wait.
Our speaker today is Mr. Moses Hetfield. As a college student, Moses was certain that he would become a social studies teacher after college. However, his path took a few twists and turns. Since he graduated in 2018, Moses worked as a substitute teacher for 24 of Pittsburgh's public schools, an event planner for 2 Jewish nonprofits, a counselor at 2 summer camps, an intern at Squirrel Hill Community Organization, a delivery bicyclist for Uber Eats, and more. He's also currently enrolled in his 2nd and final year of graduate school for public policy and management at CMU. And after all that, he expects to finally start teaching social studies next year at a high school in Texas. So everyone, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Moses.
Yay! We love Mr. Moses, yay.
Thank you, Miss Maddie. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy, for the enthusiasm there. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me see. I don't think I need to share sound. I don't have any videos or anything going here. All right. Can you all see that okay? Cool. So as Miss Maddie said, I'm Mr. Moses. I am, I'm 24 years old, so haven't been out of college very long. And so my talk today is going to sort of focus on those first few years out of college, just how those have been for me, and things you might want to just be ready for, I suppose. So let's start by just saying a little about me. So this is how I might choose to introduce myself on something like LinkedIn if I wanted to make myself seem really fancy. But I graduated from Stanford with a degree in history in 2018. I'm currently finishing up a master's at CMU in public policy and management. I own 2 businesses. I've served twice as an elected official, and I work as a freelance education professional. These are all technically true things. But I could also frame it a little bit differently. I'm finishing up this master's degree right now, and in the process of getting it, realized that I want to do something completely different. And so I'm going to be going into teaching next year, which you don't need a public policy degree for. I said I own 2 businesses. I'm a member of the East End Food Co-op, which has hundreds of members, and all of them are technically co-owners. I also deliver food with Uber Eats, which technically also makes me a business owner there, because Uber does not want to have to give anyone benefits. So they tell everyone that they're just independent contractors instead. The elected office, I've served once, and I'm about to serve again as a judge of elections, which is a poll worker. It's a job that lasts for 1 day. It's usually an elected office, but because of the pandemic, the 80-something-year-old who normally did it wasn't able to, so they asked for help, and I signed up. So technically I can say that I held what is usually an elected position, but it's nothing too fancy. And freelance education professional is a phrase that I like to use for substitute teacher if I'm feeling fancy. But my point in all this is, that essentially, when you go on LinkedIn, or you go to a networking event, or like anything where you're like seeing people talk about their careers, like they're gonna usually present themselves in the way that seems most flattering, like I did on that first slide. And that's great, and it's not, good for them. That's not necessarily it's not a bad thing. They're not necessarily lying. Everything I said was like technically true. But also, like, it's always more complicated than it looks like. And so, as you are going through your own career path, don't like look at all these people, saying fancy things about themselves and going like, why am I not like that right now? It's because they're only showing one side of themselves. You can't really judge who a person is just based on what they post to Instagram. That's not going to show their full side of their story. And both the jobs that people have and the path that took them there are usually like a little more complicated than they let on. So as Miss Maddie said, when I was in college, I thought I would leave college, get a master's in teaching, and then immediately be working as a social studies teacher. It has been 3 years since I graduated. These are all the jobs I have had since then. You may notice that social studies teacher is not on the list anywhere. Hopefully next year, if all goes according to plan. But there have been a lot of twists and turns along the way. And also just like as I go, like, you know, feel free if anyone has any like questions or comments or whatever, like feel free to just kind of jump in as I'm going. I meant to say that at the beginning. But yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that journey. So the reason that I didn't go immediately into teaching after college was that my original plan was to stay for a 5th year at Stanford and apply to the master's in teaching program there. And then that would be a 1-year program. And after that, I would be certified to teach, and I would go back to DC, where I'm from, and teach in the public schools there. But then, you know, as it turned out, I didn't end up getting into that master's program. And that kind of shook my confidence a little bit. And what I ended up deciding was that I was gonna kind of take a year, like try something a little bit different, you know, work for a nonprofit, and then sort of see how I was feeling. And the plan was at the end of the year, then I would go into a different teaching program. So I decided to do this program called Repair the World Pittsburgh, which is a service year fellowship. So basically it's a 1-year program where everyone who's in it goes to Pittsburgh and works with a couple of nonprofits to just, you know, try to help them out. And there were a couple of reasons I went for this. One was that I figured if I was taking 1 year off, I might as well use it to like go see someplace new. You know, why not try a new thing for just a year? And I had never been to Pittsburgh. I knew 0 people in Pittsburgh. It was a completely new thing for me, new place. So, so that was part of the appeal. And then with Repair the World specifically, part of the way it works is that all of the fellows live together in one house. So I thought that would be really nice, you know, to have 5 people living with me who were also doing the same job as me, who like, you know, presumably cared about similar things because they decided to do the same program. So that was one of the big reasons I did it. I thought that would make it a lot easier to adjust living in a new place. And as it turned out, you know, it was kind of a mixed bag, which I think is true for most people's first thing right out of college. But there were some things that I loved about it. I loved both of the partner organizations that I worked with. So, you know, School to Career is pictured on the left here. I think technically that's a Future Makers picture, which I wasn't involved in, but we'll pretend. And then on the right is Peer Corps, which is like a community service group for Jewish teenagers. So those were the organizations I worked with. I loved the time that I was spending.
What's it called again?
The one on the right?
The left.
School to Career?
Oh no, the other one. Yeah, right.
So that one, the one on the right is called Peer Corps. I can send it in the chat, but it's yeah, and it's actually run by Repair the World. And that picture was taken at the Free Store in Braddock, if you've been there. But so that was where that group was volunteering. So yeah, so that was Repair the World. I loved working with those organizations, but then it turned out one of the main reasons why I was doing this program, which was that built-in community, turned out to not be so great. The group dynamic was a little bit off. We all kind of hated each other. And you know, it was the sort of group environment where like it seemed like the main way that people bonded with each other was by talking about the other people in the group behind their backs. And when you're with that kind of group and you're living with them and you're working with them, that can kind of get to be a bit much. So I was pretty unhappy while I was at Repair. I really loved Pittsburgh. I felt really lucky to have ended up in a city that I liked this much, considering that I really knew nothing about it going in, except that there used to be steel mills. But yeah, it was a hard adjustment for me. I think the adjustment from like college to work is kind of hard to begin with, and then not having any friends and having this kind of difficult group environment. And so I just saw Nikoye in the chat, Pittsburgh. And basically what ended up happening was I decided to quit the program halfway through, and that was a really hard decision for me. My parents definitely raised me to like not quit things that you had started. And I was kind of agonizing over it for a couple of months, but in the end, I was really glad that I left. I was much happier afterwards. And I think I learned a lot about like what I care about and what I need in a job. And you know, the nice thing was I still kept volunteering at School to Career afterwards. So I kept volunteering with my service partners after I left Repair the World itself, which was fun. So that was my favorite part of it. But here's my awkward little Pittsburgh Public Schools staff ID. When I left Repair, I needed a job to finish out the school year. And since, you know, teaching was kind of my thing, I decided that substitute teaching could be a good way to just sort of round out the year.
Mr. Moses, I'm sorry to interrupt. Trinity has her hand raised. Trinity, is that from a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
No, it's okay. Trinity, do you have a question, dear?
Yes. Do you feel like your mental health definitely got better after you quit?
That's a great question. It definitely got a lot better. It took a little while after I quit, to be honest. So at the Repair the World House, there were a lot of things that would be made into a really big deal that really shouldn't have been. Like there was a lot of gossip going around about like the brand of toilet paper that someone chose to buy for the house, and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they would choose like this brand, which is a little bit more expensive, and now we all have to pay a little bit more for toilet paper. And like that type of thing would be made into a big deal. Like that's kind of what the environment was like. And when I left the house, I definitely was, you know, doing a lot better once I quit from the beginning, but it was kind of a process. And there was a point a couple of weeks later where my new house ran out of toilet paper, and I was like, oh, I'll get some. And I got to the store and I started having just like a panic attack, because I was like, oh no, like what if I choose the wrong type and then they're gonna hate me? And so I texted the whole new house group chat, and everyone was like, we don't really care. Like we just need toilet paper. And that was, so like, I guess the point of that story is, it definitely helped a lot, but it wasn't like all immediate. There was still like some things where my brain was just in a weird spot from being used to that dynamic. But yeah, my mental health definitely improved a lot, and I was happier. I was sleeping better. I was a lot less anxious, and just like felt more, you know, fulfilled and happy with myself. So yeah, great question. And I'm sorry I didn't see your hand up. I think sometimes when I'm sharing the screen,
Oh no, that's understandable. I'll keep an eye on the
fine.
chat and such, so no worries. Oh, I think Mr. Moses froze. Let's give him a minute. Let's see if he can reconnect. Oh, you're muted, but you're moving now.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, I think it looked like Zoom disconnected for a second there. For me, I don't know why. Trinity, did you have a question?
No, sorry, that's why I put that X right there.
Oh, okay. I've done that a lot. It's hard to remember to put it down sometimes. All right. Do you see the screen again? All right, cool. Sorry about that. But yeah, I started substitute teaching full time. And I really, especially at first, I was really just hopping from school to school. So
you teach history, right?
So that's one of the things I prefer to do, but as a sub, I kind of taught everything. So I've done every grade from pre-K through 12th grade. And I did some subjects more than others. So I did a lot of history. I did a lot of math and a lot of Spanish classes. Those were the ones that I did the most. But with substitute teachers, I mean, as I'm sure you all know, like, oftentimes the people don't really expect a lot to get done when there's a sub there, which also means from a school's perspective, they'll sometimes just stick anyone in where there's an opening, even if that person doesn't know the subject very well. But I did do a lot of different subjects, a lot of different age groups. And in that first semester I was subbing, I did 23 schools. Now I'm up to 25. The progress has slowed down. Yeah, so subbed all over the place. And I really, this was not a job that was ever part of my plan. It was kind of something that I fell into because I needed work to finish out that school year. But I really just tried to make the best of it and to, make it a good learning experience for myself. And I think it really was. I got to talk with so many different students and teachers and see so many different schools operating. And I really felt like I was learning a lot every day, and, no 2 days were the same. It was always interesting. And like, I've been to schools where students would tell me that like usually their substitutes would just kind of sit at the teacher's desk and play on their phone all day and ignore the kids. And like, to me, that's just kind of sad. It seems like kind of a waste of everyone's time when that's happening. And it was really important for me to like, if I'm going to be in the school of substitute teaching, I want to really be involved. I want to get to know the kids. I want to like, to the extent that it's possible in the time that I'm there, like try to help them learn whatever they're supposed to be learning. But I think two big things came out of the substitute teaching, at least like in the short term here. One was that I went to so many different schools, and like really saw, I would see like some schools where I was like, wow, this school is a complete disaster, frankly. But also like some schools where I'm like, oh, like this school is doing something right. And it really got me thinking about like, if some schools have figured it out, like why haven't all the schools? Like how can we try to, like, what can we do to make the school system work for everyone? And so I was thinking a lot more about this kind of bigger picture side of education. And to be honest, I also was having some second thoughts about teaching, because substitute teaching can be a hard job. Students are not always on their finest behavior when a sub is in the room. I did have a few pretty...
No, they are not.
No, they are not. Right. So yeah, so it's like, so I had some pretty rough days on the job, and there were a couple times where I was like, I don't know if I could do this like every day for the rest of my career. And so because I was starting to think about this like bigger picture of education policy, and also because I was frankly a little bit scared off from teaching when I started as a sub, I decided to sort of change paths a little bit, and I applied to Carnegie Mellon to study public policy and management, to kind of learn the skills that I would need to sort of create this more like system-wide change in education. So this is the public policy building at CMU. Yeah, Nicoya, I'm glad you love substitutes.
I will yell at all the kids that were bad.
That's good. I always appreciate the student who does that, because
yeah, we appreciate you, Trinity. Seriously.
Yeah, very much. I gotta say, it makes things a lot easier to even just have like one student in there who's like trying to lay down the law, because it's honestly hard for a sub to do it by themselves, especially not knowing the names and all that. Trinity, which school do you go to, out of curiosity?
I go to UPrep.
UPrep?
Milan,
yeah. I subbed there once. Yeah, I was I was mostly with the high schoolers most of the day, and their attendance was really low that day, so it was like kind of chill. But then I had one period where I was subbing for the middle schoolers, and that was I must say a bit of a nightmare. But you know, it was certainly an interesting experience. So yeah, so now I'm kind of finishing up this degree at CMU, public policy. And you know, I got there, at first I was having a grand old time, but as it went on, I really found myself missing working with kids. And I actually started, the thing with substitute teaching is like, it's a job where you can kind of do it when you want to. So I didn't actually have to quit my job to start school. I just stopped showing up very often. But I found myself over the course of this master's program, I kept sneaking off, and instead of like doing my homework, I would sneak off to substitute teach somewhere. And that was like my guilty pleasure. And after thinking about it for a little while, you know, I was doing this and I was like, maybe if that's my guilty pleasure, then that should just be my job. It's kind of weird for that to be something that someone does but feels guilty about, just like teaching. And so like, I might as well make it so it's something I can just do all the time and don't have to feel guilty about, because it's my actual job. And so I did eventually decide, despite being in this policy program, I do actually want to go into teaching, at least for now. You know, maybe somewhere down the line I'll want to go into policy, but I decided to apply to some teaching programs for after this. And I ended up getting into a program called Teach for America. I don't know if any of y'all have heard of it. They don't operate in Pittsburgh, but basically it's a program where they send people to schools that have a high need for teachers, where they're having trouble hiring teachers. And they give them some like training and some support, and you work in those schools for 2 years as a teacher. And I decided to do Teach for America partly because it was a way for me to get into teaching and, you know, have that job with the full salary right away without having to spend more time in school first, because otherwise I might have needed to like go to another graduate school, and that was not something I wanted to do right after. I didn't really want to get 2 master's degrees in a row. So Teach for America placed me in the Rio Grande Valley, which this is a picture of, I think this is Brownsville, Texas here. But this is like the border of Texas and Mexico is where they placed me. So I'll be teaching social studies somewhere in that area for the next 2 years. I'm very excited about it. I'm definitely nervous about it. It's kind of far away, and it's going to be very, very different from Pittsburgh. Even from this picture, you can tell there are a lot more palm trees and fewer hills than we have in Pittsburgh. There is still a river, so I guess that's something. But yeah, that'll be the next step. So yeah, any like questions about the like Mr. Moses journey so far? If not,
you said that you didn't get into a program or something like that. How did you like pick yourself like back up after that?
That's a great question. So I think I did have an issue where I was really set on one program, and I think normally, like, you know, everyone sometimes doesn't get into things. Like, rejection is very much just like a part of life. But I think I was really set on this one program, and so when I didn't get into it, I was just kind of floored by that, and it did take me a little while. I think something that was really helpful was, something that's just always helpful is just like, you know, talking to people, talking with family, talking with friends, you know, people who knew me pretty well, and who could kind of give me ideas for ways to move forward. I certainly, you know, if I had to do it all over again, I think it would have been better if I applied to more than one program. But I did end up, you know, applying to other programs after I got rejected from that one. And I think something that's just like important to remember, which like I kind of needed people to remind me of at that time, was like, you know, the things you get like accepted or rejected from like does not define you. The fact that like this one like pretty small program that I applied to didn't accept me into it does not mean that I'm not cut out to be a history teacher. Like, it does not mean that I'm a failure. It does not mean that, you know, it doesn't mean any of that. It just means there wasn't room, you know. Like, and there are so many, you know, it's not a very transparent process. Admissions, like, you don't know how many spots they have. You don't know like what about, you know, like who else was applying. You don't know like what about your application might have made the difference. You don't know like whose parents donated millions of dollars for the school to have a new building. Like, not that I think that that's what happened in this case, but my point is just like,
it's also not implausible. Just
right. Right. I mean, I did, when I was at Stanford, I did know some students there who had the same last names as some of the buildings, which, like, you know, that doesn't, I also don't mean to suggest that like they bribed their way in, because I don't know their story, but like,
there's just a movie about it. But
I was about to say, I'm not suggesting the opposite though.
Right. I mean, you know, I was in a dorm with someone whose parents gave the sailing coach $6 million to pretend that she was worth recruiting to the sailing team. But
that's another Friday speaker.
That's another story. Anyway, my point with this is like, you really just can't let it get to you. And I think like since that time, when I have not gotten into things that I've applied for, I've been able to like handle it in a much more healthy way, where I'm just like, oh, like, didn't get this thing, like, that'll make the decision easier when I get into something else and I don't have to choose between them, you know. Like, I think you know, like, you're gonna, if you're like really applying to stuff, you're gonna get into something, and you know, it's sometimes hard to tell like which thing is going to be the best thing for you going in. So I often like to have that choice made for me by only getting into one thing, but like, I know that's controversial, but that is how I operate, honestly, at this point. But yeah, I think that was definitely like, that was tough for me, just because I had allowed that one application to feel like a core part of my identity, but it's not part of your identity, it's an application. So I think I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is just kind of, the rest of the presentation is just sort of like miscellaneous thoughts and advice. Mr. Jeremy seems to like my choice of pictures here. I will say most of the memes and pop culture references that are in this PowerPoint are probably about 6 years old. So hopefully other people will enjoy them too, but me and Mr. Jeremy can always laugh at them. But yeah, you know, when you leave college, you may hear Taylor Swift singing about feeling 22 and assume that's a good thing. And, you know, I'm sure some people have a great time as 22-year-olds. I will say, in the experience of like my friends from high school and from college, a lot of people do have, you know, a tough time transitioning. I think transitions are always difficult, and going from college to like a full-time job is a big transition. Yeah, and like it's normal for that to be kind of tough. Again, not to say it's true for everyone, but like for a lot of people, the first year is going to be kind of hard, and that doesn't mean that like the rest of your life is going to be miserable. It means that like, you know, you're adjusting to a new lifestyle, and you know, change can sometimes be hard. Another thing, I think like when I was in high school and college, I definitely had this idea that like, oh, you know, I'm going to go off to college, and then as soon as I graduate, I'm going to have this dream job where I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to be making this huge difference in the world, and everyone's going to be like, wow, that Moses Hetfield, look at him go. And like, you know, that's, and like in practice, you know, it can be hard to get that right out of college. And usually, I see a chat. All right, bye, Miss Maddie.
Bye, have a great rest of your year, and everyone else, bye.
Bye, so great to meet you.
Thank you, Miss Maddie. I'll see you at the event in just a minute. And yeah, guys, if you all didn't know, today is Miss Maddie's last day. We want to thank you. And I'll see you next week.
Yep, I'll see you, Miss Carla. Bye, Trinity. Bye, Nicoye. Bye.
Bye.
I'll see you in about 10 minutes.
So Nicoye asked a great question in the chat. How did you learn to transition from college, especially with moving to a new area you're not familiar with? Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing, especially with moving to a new area, for me was like, number one, trying to get really involved. Just like getting involved in the community, like going, like if I heard about any events, like I was there. I did a lot of volunteering. I did a lot of like really just like trying to be out there, getting to know people. I think college is a place where it's really easy to make friends generally, and right after college can feel a lot harder. It's a little different. You're not living in dorms with people who are also looking to make friends. It's yeah, so that can be more challenging. So I think number one was just trying to be really involved, trying to really get to know the new place and the new community. I think that is really important and kind of helps you build sort of a support system in a new spot. And I think also, I mean, you know, I think this is good within reason. You don't want to be so dependent on it that you don't like bother to meet new people. But I do think like phone calls home were definitely helpful for me. Like I was calling my mom a lot my first year here, and my friends from college, and I think it is helpful while you're building your new support system to like really make sure that you maintain your old connections too. Yeah, I think those were the big things, but it was tough. I'm not sure that I would recommend moving to a totally new place where you don't know a single person after college. I mean, well, I guess, you know, now 3 years in, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I moved to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's great. Oh, no problem, Trinity. But certainly that first year like was really rough. It was hard, but I think because I was really involved in a lot of things, I think that set me up for success for like the second year, you know. Cool. So if there are no more questions about this slide, my last bullet point here is just that like you might have one dream job at some point in your life, and then you start doing that job or something related to it, and then you're like, actually, I kind of hate this, and that's fine. You know, there are a lot of jobs out there, and if you find that you are not loving the job that you thought you would love, like, you know, particularly like early in your career, you know, it's not too late to sort of, you know, shift and work towards a new goal. Yeah, another little like lesson of mine, you know, again, within reason. I don't think any lessons are good to take to an extreme, but it can be okay to quit, you know. I think your first job out of college is a really good way to learn what you don't like, as well as what you do like. And if it's really not working for you, I think it makes a lot more sense to kind of move on to something else rather than, you know, spending another 50 years on this path that is not working for you. But, you know, of course, like when you're quitting, it's best to like try to do so tactfully in a way that doesn't like mess up the place that you're working for. Try not to burn those bridges, give a couple of weeks notice at least before you leave. Like don't flip any tables on your way out. But but yeah, I do think it's important to just acknowledge that like sometimes like there are times when, you know, for your mental health or for, you know, whatever other reasons there might be, like sometimes the right thing to do is to move on. So yeah. And then like, this is something that I think is important too. Like, it's hard to know.
I'm loving this. I'm sorry. This is just everything to me.
I'm glad to hear it. So you know, the world is a strange and chaotic and confusing place sometimes, and you know, you might find yourself wanting to change paths at some point, and you know, it's not like literally never too late to change paths. You know, if you've like never touched a piano in your life, and on you're 90 years old and on your deathbed you say you want to become a concert pianist, like that might be a challenge. But like you know, but generally speaking, it's usually not too late to change your path. It does get harder the longer you wait, I think. And so for that reason, I'm a big believer that like, you know, learn what you can now. You really never know how it's going to come in handy later. I've had so many times where I've learned something like maybe just for fun or like because it was required for a class, and it seemed like I'm never going to use this in real life. And then, you know, like 4 years later, out of the blue, something pops up, and that's exactly the thing that is needed. And if currently, I mean, to use the example I gave on the side of the screen here, if currently you want to be a professional synchronized swimmer, then I think that's so cool. I don't know if there's any money in that, but I think that's really cool. But also maybe still pay attention in your math class. And and then if down the road, you win a few Olympic gold medals, and then you're like, all right, I'm done with that. Time to try something else. I think I want to be an engineer. It's going to be much harder to become an engineer if you don't have your high school math in your pocket, Mm-hmm. So the more you learn now, the more flexibility you'll have later if you decide you do want to change paths. I would say another thing on this front, if you're not really sure what you want, it can be nice to start with something that's intended to be temporary. So, I talked about Repair the World. That was a 1-year program, even though for me it was a 6-month program. And Teach for America is a 2-year thing. And with that sort of thing, you can kind of dip your toe in the water, try out a certain line of work. And, if you love it, then that's awesome. And you'll probably meet people during that time who can help you find a good job in that field at the end of it. And if you don't love it, then you don't have to go through the whole quitting process, unless you are me and you do anyway. But if it's temporary, eventually that ends, and you can make the decision very easily, if you want to do something different or if you want to keep going with that. And then last point here, college is a place where we gain a lot of things, some of which are knowledge, some of which are debt. And the I think it's first of all, really, it's important to say it can definitely make sense for you to take out student loans. You will probably make a lot more money if you have a college degree than if you don't. And taking out student loans is usually a good investment. Usually that extra money will pay for itself. But that being said, if you graduate with less debt, it does kind of give you more flexibility to try different things. If you're able to get some savings, you can afford to experiment a little bit more than if you're $200,000 in debt. So I was very fortunate to be at a school with good financial aid and to have parents who helped me pay. But I think a lot of people, people often don't talk enough about how financial aid stuff works. I know school to career probably is not that place, but I'm still going to go for it anyway because I think you can't talk about it too much. So Stanford, if you go online and you look up Stanford tuition, you get that it's $55,000 a year for tuition, about $18,000 for room and board, and it's really easy to look at that price and say, well, there's no way I could afford that. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to apply there. So the average household in Pittsburgh makes $48,000 a year about. Does anyone have any guesses for how much that average household would have to pay if they went to Stanford?
$100,000 a year?
You said $100,000 a year, Trinity?
Yeah.
How about you, Nicoya? Do you have a guess?
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
So if your parents make just the average amount of money of a household in Pittsburgh, how much do you think you would have to pay for a year at Stanford?
So say we're coming from here, and is that in-state tuition or out-of-state? So
essentially out of state. So Stanford's a private school, so they don't have separate tuition for in-state and out-of-state. It's the same amount.
I think maybe around 90,000.
Okay, so as
you
it
all
turns
are
out,
missing that it's 55,000 a year. You went over the amount.
Yeah, well, I think either way, it works for the sake of this example. So the actual amount that you would pay to go to Stanford, assuming that your family made like the average amount of someone in Pittsburgh, you would pay the price of the plane tickets to get there, and that's it. If you make if you make just the average amount in Pittsburgh, then like automatically Stanford does not charge you tuition or room and board. So you go there, you get a free education, you get a free place to live, and you get free food for 4 years. How about if you let's say your family is like pretty well-to-do, they made 3 times as much money as the average person in Pittsburgh. How much do you think, Nakoya's reaction is right, gasp. How much do you think they would have to pay? Any guesses?
The price that's on the screen.
What did you say?
The price that's on the screen.
Oh, the price that's on the screen. Okay, so you're guessing 74,000. Nakoya, do you have a guess?
No, I do not. I'm just still stuck on how there's no tuition.
Yeah. So here's the real kicker. If you make 3 times the average amount of money of a household in Pittsburgh, your family does not have to pay tuition either. They only have to pay room and board. So your cost would be $18,000, and that would cover your education and your place to live and your food. Mr. Jeremy has some thoughts about this.
You have to get in.
Right. So that
like
is
that for Princeton and Harvard and Yale. But yeah,
right. And so that is the big thing. These are schools where the people who get in often have parents who are well above that amount of money. So I think that's a huge caveat. But I do think my larger point here is that if you looked at the sticker price here, it would be very easy to look at that and say, I'm not even going to bother looking at the school anymore. But there are schools out there that have good financial aid where that sticker price is not necessarily relevant, depending on your family's income.
And I have to go. I'm so sorry, but I mean,
it's
especially like
yeah.
Nicoya, if you Google zero loan schools, those are the type. They're mostly Ivies, but those are the schools that will pop up. That you don't have to have, your family income. $18,000 a year is a wonderful thing. So it just didn't work to get in. So yay! But it is so good to see you, Mr. Moses.
Yeah, it's so good to see you too, Miss Carla.
We usually don't have anything after Friday speaker on Fridays, but this
I know. But tonight is Maddie's last day, and they're having a big report out, so I do have to go to that.
Okay.
But thank you. It's so good to see you, and congratulations on graduation. So proud of you. I can't believe 2 years went by so quickly.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what's happening. I know. I can't wait to hear what's going on in Texas when you get there. So please keep in touch with us.
Thank you.
All right, guys, you all have a good weekend, and I will talk to you later, Jeremy.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, you too. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right. See you, Nicoya.
All right. Kind of an inauspicious end to that presentation. Yeah. I apologize.
That's all.